Welcome to Climate Notes, the inaugural event in what we anticipate will be an ongoing biannual initiative. My name is Ian Krause, and I have the honor of serving as the co-chair of the Division of Composition and Theory, alongside my colleague Richard Danielpour. We call this afternoon's gathering an event because, although it is a concert, it is entirely more than that. The brainchild of our honored benefactor, Suzanne Weiss Morgen, who I will invite to the stage momentarily, Climate Notes brings UCLA climate change and atmospheric studies student researchers into close communion and collaboration with 7 composition majors who have worked closely together to explore the intersection of climate science and music. I have been a professor at UCLA for 35 years, and I cannot recall an event that placed scientists and musicians together in the same space. Ironic it is, and well overdue, given that the music buildings and the science buildings are just a short stroll from each other. It is Suzanne's and our fervent wish that this event will prove to be the seed for many more interactions to come. Here's how it worked. Last fall, we put out a call for proposals to our composition students to share their unique visions for tying together some aspect of climate change or atmospheric science that was important to them with a new composition. The specific instrumentation was left entirely up to the student composers, and as you will witness in a moment, some of them chose to augment the acoustic instruments with electronic sounds, video, and dance. Approximately 12 students submitted proposals, all quite worthwhile. 7 were selected for this round. Suzanne's generous gift enabled us to not only offer a commission to 5 of these composers, but to pay for the services of the fabulous UCLA music majors who will be performing. All in all, we were able to simulate how it works in the professional world, for which we are so very grateful. Before I invite Suzanne to the stage, I'd like to thank Jessica Wolf and Reed Sparrison for the terrific articles that appeared recently in UCLA Newsroom and the Daily Bruin. I expect that some of you who are here today learned of this event from one of those 2 sources. I would also like to thank composition PhD candidate Austin Ali and PhD climate scientist Sarah Graves for their work in coordinating and pulling this event together. They are both PhD students who are advanced to candidacy. My role has been a kind of a behind-the-scenes one as an enabler and a coach. The students have done the heavy lifting. If this afternoon's collaboration between scientists and musicians inspires you to do so, please consider making a donation to support the second Climate Notes concert, which will take place about this time in 2027. Your donation, large or small, will be tucked away to do just that. There are QR codes on either side of the auditorium, which will take you to a digital portal for the purposes of making a donation. And thank you in advance for considering that. Immediately after the musical presentation, we will invite our composers and scientists to the stage to introduce themselves and share their research with you, and to receive your questions and comments. We will take a 5-minute break to set the stage before we reassemble. And now it is time to meet our benefactor. Suzanne Weiss Morgen graduated with a degree in music from UCLA with an emphasis in vocal performance, and went on to do her graduate work at USC in vocal pedagogy. She has both performed and taught for decades, including with several junior colleges, as well as sustaining a successful private vocal studio, helping students of all ages, skill levels, and vocal styles. Suzanne is also a poet and a composer of both secular and liturgical music, sometimes setting her own poems to music, as well as creating new lyrics for her creations. She is the author of The Arc of Grieving, Poems for the Journey, a book of original poetry created to put into words difficult emotions not easily expressed and to bring comfort, support, and understanding to those grieving. Prior to this event, Suzanne established the Vocal Vision Awards, giving opera UCLA students the opportunity to participate in a public recital competition program. Singing selections only in English, they are afforded the chance to be judged and guided by 3 highly regarded music professionals. Suzanne is excited and inspired by creativity, and now she's thrilled to be able to help to bring the Climate Notes event to life and showcase the collaboration of talented composition and climate science students here at UCLA. It is my profound honor and pleasure to welcome to the stage fellow Bruin, Suzanne Weiss Morgen.
I just want to start by welcoming everybody here in the hall and everybody who's watching on the live stream. Because of the articles that were written, which we're extremely grateful for, and because of the beautiful, beautiful posters that are outside, I don't want to be too repetitive, but I want to tell you a little bit about how this came to be. I envisioned and established Climate Notes really to honor my wonderful father, who began his career as a meteorologist in the Army during World War II. So you might think, did he as a little boy want to be a meteorologist? And the answer is no. It happened because when he joined up in the Army, what they did is they gave aptitude tests. And lo and behold, he scored incredibly high in meteorology. So they sent him to Greenland, that island that you now know about because of its strategic location. And he spent the war there working on what they called meteorological intelligence, weather intelligence, whereby they would gather data and do all kinds of analysis to help the Allies with both the planes and the ships. When the war ended, at that point he said, I've invested this much in meteorology, I'm going to get a degree in meteorology. Well, it turned out that very, very few schools had such a program. But lo and behold, UCLA was one of the few schools that did. So he came here, and he graduated in just the 2nd class of that program. They had just really started the program. So it's a full circle moment to be honoring him here at UCLA. And I went to UCLA, my father obviously went to UCLA, my mother went to UCLA, so we are a full-up Bruin community in my family. So what can I tell you about my dad? When he graduated, he began his meteorological career, and he worked in many aspects, and it was very interesting because along the way, I came to have what I would call sort of a perk, a fringe benefit of the fact that he was a meteorologist. Because what would happen is when I was in elementary school, he would sometimes say, Suzanne, today is a day to take an umbrella to school. Even though it was a bright, sunshiny day. And I would go with my umbrella, and people would think this girl was crazy. And then, later on in the day, it would start raining. And after this happened several times, somehow they got the sense this girl has a dad who's a weatherman. And it was a very exciting place to be in. And as I was saying to my husband, I thought of it in Galinda from Wicked terms because I became suddenly popular. So I thanked him very much for that. It was really an inside scoop. What happened after a while is he decided he was going to move on from being a weatherman, and he became an expert in rocket launch safety, and so good at it that he went to Japan numerous times because he was the expert that they sent there to train the people there. And then later still in his career, he went on and worked on the space shuttle program, which had him travel quite a bit. He was in Houston, Huntsville, Alabama, and of course, the Cape. So later in our lives, my father didn't like to travel because he did so much traveling for business purposes. But all of that science put on the side, I will tell you that he was also an artist, very much the Renaissance man. He did a lot of work with pastels, pen and ink, charcoal. He was an avid learner, a very engaged person, very curious, and I think that he would be thrilled with this program today, and that delights me. So thank you all very much for being here. I'm going to open the program by sharing with you one of my poems that I wrote. This is a spoken word poem that is on the subject of climate change. It's called Our Hallowed Home. Now is the moment for the message about climate change to drive a passion. Fashion deep compassion for the planet and its people, find solutions to pollution, providing more protection and correction, new direction. Get the lead out, move ahead, there are people to be fed. We've got to hurry, got to worry for the present and the future generations. Hesitations now must cease. We must increase our own commitment, shrug off apathy and atrophy and abject mediocrity, shake off our own ambivalence, invigorate and stimulate. We all need shelter from the swelter, ice and snow and floods that flow to vicious storms. They are new norms. Raging fires to extinguish, deep frustrations to relinquish, indignation, consternation, open up to conservation, innovation, revelation. Let the barricades be breached with leaders, citizens beseeched, observe the catastrophic weathered towns and cities left bereft, beleaguered wastelands of their former glory, left to tell their tragic story. Dealing with extreme conditions challenges our old positions, propositions, suppositions. Take a moment, tell the tale of our perilous travail. Global warming, new threats forming, not performing, not conforming. So much harm and more to follow. Hard to swallow, comprehend. Need to find a way to mend. Using power from the wind and from the sun, commit to make the long haul run. Everything now is at stake, make no mistake. We could awaken much too late and on the brink. Think, polar bears could be extinct. Toxic neglect leads to decline. We can't pretend that things are fine or that it's natural evolution. That is not a real solution when we need a revolution. With the scientists as soldiers, weapons primed to save us all, every creature, large and small, politicians of the globe unite in this our existential fight. Now is the moment, clean the mess and stress. We cannot acquiesce to trust that justice will prevail. With much at risk, we must not fail. There's nothing more important now, so get on board some way, somehow. 'Cause anywhere you go or roam, this earth is still our hallowed home. Thank you. Thank you.
we go. Good afternoon. Today we will be presenting how, due to increases in hydraulic whiplash, California will face net water supply losses. Thank you. Drought frequency percentile. 5.19%. 6.04%. 6.69%, 7.84%, 9.32%, 11.25%, 12.19%, 12.96%, 13.95%. Altogether, the work presented here paints a compelling picture of a drier and more volatile future hydroclimate across the Sierra Nevada. Using a machine-based hybrid downscaling approach to create a large ensemble data set of future Sierra Nevada stream flow, we present a threefold increase in hydraulic whiplash events by the end of the century that is almost entirely attributable to a strengthening of the dry component. Sorry. Hold up. You were listening? Oh, you were listening. Okay. I'll just keep going. Our results show that the California will likely endure more intense and frequent water supply shortages with a diminishing recovery capacity. At the same time, intensifying wet precipitation events could exponentially increase flood risk as the region shifts through a drain-dominated flood regime marked by more precipitous spikes in stream flow. Our findings allude to widespread global water supply challenges and signal an urgent need for scientists to support local water resource decision makers by improving our understanding of changing hydraulic extremes and their regional impacts. In other words, things are looking really bad. I feel like that was clear, but I wanted to make sure. That because it feels to me like nobody gets it. It feels like I'm the only
Osborne. Thank you. Good one, guys.
Like a limp rose wreath in a
Hello again, everyone. I'm not going to lie to you, I'm out here to cover some time while we get the next piece set up. The students told me, Mr. Krause, no Eddie Murphy routines, no Jim Carrey wannabes, and definitely no dad jokes. I promised them, so I wouldn't do it. As one of their teachers, I'm very proud of the work that these students have done. Yeah. And especially that they all have their own voice, right? We don't have a school style here. You know, our aim, and all of my colleagues assembled here tonight would agree, our aim is to promote artistry and to help our students to develop their own voices and to grow and flourish in a very non-threatening, supportive environment. You can probably sense that in the audience. All the students support each other very, very much. And we're very, very pleased about that. On a more serious note, if you haven't had time to do so, please aim your cameras at the program and take a look at the beautiful notes that the students wrote about these pieces. You will also find in the program the names of all of the scientist students who are here in our midst. But most importantly, we made the decision not to have the students come up and talk about their pieces beforehand. That was their decision, I supported it. But it's important that you understand how the music connects to science. In some cases, it was fairly obvious. In other cases, less so. For example, the very first piece is called Swan Song. And as we speak, there are species that are becoming extinct, and many more so to come. It says in the program that there will be an intermission. That's a lie, okay? Think of it as a 5 or 10 minute, maybe a bathroom break to get a drink of water, and mainly giving us time to set up chairs on the stage where we're going to have all the composers and all the scientists come up and sit together and maybe chat a little bit about their research, their priorities. Our science students spend a lot of time by themselves poring over data in computers, with computer labs and this kind of thing. So I think this is their chance to kind of get out, right, and get out and about. So we want to give them some love. Also, I'm hoping that once you read the program notes and study up a little bit, that you'll have some questions ready for them. These are some extremely smart young people, and they're ready with answers, I know. And they're learning to speak in layman's terms, right? Which I know is difficult to do. So in any event, I don't know what else to say up here. That's pretty much it. I hope that you've enjoyed yourself, and we're going to do this again in 2 years. And my goal, Suzanne and I have talked about this, now that we've had this launched and we can see that it actually works, the next time around, I want to connect the scientists and the composers earlier in the process so that the resulting work is really a kind of a hybrid between the two disciplines. We did that to some degree, but some of the pieces today are that way, and you can probably tell which ones were created jointly with a scientist and a composer, but we want to do more of that. Speaking of hybrid, the reason why this setup takes so long is because this piece involves the amalgamation of live acoustic instruments with electronics, okay? And it just takes a little bit of time to set it up. Electronic music has been around for a long time. It's been around since the 50s, maybe at least. And it's been a factor in high art and low art music ever since that time. But the technology today has become so amazing that a whole new art form is really starting to burgeon in front of us. And maybe some of you who are not musicians are not aware of this, but pretty much all the music that you hear accompanying media of any type, whether it's video games, movies, television, commercials, pretty much all of it is nowadays made on a computer, even when it sounds like it's live acoustic instruments. And although that may be bad news for players of live acoustic instruments, they have nothing to worry about, because what's happening nowadays, especially in commercial music and film music, is that composers are creating what we call hybrid style, which is a mixture of acoustic music and electronic music, sometimes along a continuum where one sort of turns into the other gradually, right? It's not an extreme or sudden juxtaposition. And Morgan Moss, the composer of our next piece, is very much involved in this. I hope she doesn't mind me saying that she's working with the composer Bear McCreary. Do you all know who he is? You've all seen TV series that he's scored. He's one of the top film composers working nowadays, and Morgan is working in his studio, assisting him and doing a lot of work. I'm not exactly sure what she does. Maybe she'll tell you a little bit more about it. But in that world, the world in which she's now swimming, hybrid music is the thing. And all of our students, if Richard and Kay and David and I were younger, we'd probably be doing it too. But we're probably too old to learn. I'll speak for myself. Too old to learn new tricks. But all of our younger students are learning this technology and how to merge it. It's a very exciting time. Have I filled up enough time? Okay, thank you so much. No Eddie Murphy. Next time. there a button? It's fine now? Okay. I don't need it. Just a... So as soon as everyone's assembled up there, we'd love to have questions from the audience. We have some very, very smart people up there who are doing cutting-edge research on things that matter a great deal to us.
Come take a seat, y'all. Sorry, Dr. Krause.
Is Austin there?
Yes,
Austin's
sir.
there. Austin, why don't we put you on first? Please tell us about your collaboration.
Yes, I'd be more than happy to tell you about the collaboration. And let me sit next to the collaborator. How about that?
Yes, exactly.
So hello, everybody. Thanks for sticking around for the Q&A, and we're ready to answer all of your Q's with some great A's. My name is Austin Ali, and I wrote A Cosmic Perspective, and my collaborator here is Katie Osborne, who made the film A Cosmic Perspective. I'll let you say hi and say what your major is and all that.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Katie Osborne. I'm a PhD student in the Department of Civil Environmental Engineering, and I did major in climate science when I was in undergrad, and I've been involved in music at UCLA for the past 8 years or so on the side. But yeah, I'm so happy to be here and be a part of this.
It's our honor. It's our honor. Thank you.
So what was the connection between your music and her research?
Yes. So the group that you heard that performed is called Good Time Brass and was formed when the members of this brass quintet were all graduate, and still are, graduate students at the Herb Alpert School of Music. And we played a lot together. And the trombonist, who happens to be in the audience today, Nathan Kolkazi, introduced us to Katie because they're dating, and they have been longtime Bruins for the past majority of the decade. They are such true Bruins. And Katie and I bonded over both of us being trumpet players and interested in science. I'm an artist interested in science, and Katie is the opposite of that. And so we were able to craft a work that's very personal for our best friends and make something that connected to what we're passionate about and what we could use each other's expertise and shared language. We can maybe talk more about the actual scientific shared language if you'd like.
We'd love to.
Yeah. So it was a lot of fun kind of talking about the different options of how we could intersect science with music. And I told Austin about all the different kind of areas of research that I've done. And him being a huge space guy was very interested in some of the satellite work that I'd help with partnering with JPL and UCLA. And so we started to explore kind of the parallels between satellite waves and musical waves, and then of course real waves in real life. So actually, if you hopefully you noticed the line that kept coming up in the video, that was actually a literal spectra plot of water pixels in the Malibu lagoon that we filmed on over time. So we were trying to kind of link the abstract, the hard data, and the real life experience, and kind of do a series of parallels to connect scientists back to real life experiences and get more people invested in science through those real life experiences.
So Katie, why do we need to care about what's happening in the Malibu Lagoon these days?
That's a fantastic question. So specifically, the area that we filmed in is a type of estuary called a barbell estuary, and it's a really dynamic habitat, and it has a sandbar that's perpendicular to the outflow of a freshwater river out into the ocean, so you get like a lot of mixing going on. But the thing is that these kind of areas are both really resilient and also very impacted by climate change, because obviously throughout the day, as you saw in the video, actually, the sandbar is constantly changing. And so sometimes in some barbell estuaries, the river will be flowing fully. Sometimes it'll be closed. And when it's closed off, you have all that sitting water and nutrients building up. And this can be a huge issue, especially if there's runoff from like nearby agriculture, and too much eutrophication can cause a lot of the aquatic life to die, and too much eutrophication, too many algae blooms can be bad for us. But yeah, so anyway, as climate change exacerbates more and more of these issues and whatnot, it can really impact these areas, which are also very, very important because they're very, very biodiverse as well.
As you can tell, I'm full of questions here, but I'd love to, anyone?
That was brilliant.
In general? Yes, Isaac?
What was the collaborating process like as kind of like an artist and scientist? Like, was it smooth or like what was the process that you had to work through to get this? I guess.
Yes, for every group it'll be different. If you don't mind, and your name was Isaac? Yeah. I'm happy to answer that question first, if that's okay. So Isaac's question was it smooth collaborating with a scientist, or was it rough? Well, I would say that in our case, it was smooth because we had a shared language of knowing a little bit about what each other does and being curious, to learn more, the curiosity to learn more. And that's what everybody on this stage shares, is the curiosity about the natural world and the crisis that it's facing, and how I'll speak just for myself that I believe that my goal is to share that curiosity with every single person that I possibly can. And so when Katie and I both discovered that we're very passionate about this thing and we want to get that curiosity out to everyone, if we kept going back to that as a touchstone, it kept making really, really fruitful results. So I would say the first answer is shared language, and the second is curiosity, and that is how we did it.
I'd like to forward that question to John and Sarah.
Yes.
Because they work very closely on their collaboration. You should go.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I feel like so much of it I would say like trust. So a lot of it was just like literally like me ranting to him about like how it felt to be a climate scientist and like everything that's happening now. And I feel like he just was able to like take that and then turn it into something really cool that like was able to communicate everything I wanted to in a way that I don't think I know how to. So I think that was a really cool process that went surprisingly well.
Cool, glad to hear it.
John's a man of few words. But your music is very dramatic, always is so successful and very, very powerful. Maddie, you wrote a gorgeous aria, basically. I wish we could have seen the words. That's probably in the program. But I'm sure the words probably had something to do with climate change, right?
Yeah, definitely. The topic that I chose was somewhat niche, and maybe you read in the program, but it was about the rapid decline of the monarch butterfly due to a lot of different reasons, but one of them being climate change. And I found this beautiful Robert Frost poem, which is actually about a dead butterfly, which is a really sad topic, but the poem is so beautiful that I found it really inspiring, and a lot of the music came from that.
And are any of our climate scientists working with an area that overlaps that at all? Yeah, I thought so. Please tell us. Please tell us who you are and your major.
Hi, I'm Andrea. I'm a first year in the Atmospheric and Oceanic Sciences department. Even though I am in climate science now, I actually was a bio major in undergrad. And so when Maddie brought the idea up, I was really excited because I haven't really thought about bio in a minute. It is a really sad topic, though.
And music is good at being very, very sad.
Yes, it is.
That's one of the things we do best. Let's hear from another group of collaborators or people who've at least talked about the Morgan.
Hi.
This is Morgan.
Yeah, my topic was so huge that I actually did have a little bit of trouble finding like one particular scientist, because pretty much everybody on this stage is doing something that involves tipping points, which is basically just what is accelerating us towards a lot of climate change problems. But Kira and Serbi so kindly answered an email from me desperately saying, can you please just help me find numbers and data and something? So they both gave me a lot of really, really great resources resources, and I found a lot of great visuals, and a lot of them just kind of looked like this, which was very cool. It made it into the score for sure. But yeah, it was a little bit more of a loose collaboration, but I was really, really thankful because I would not have been able to do it without these two ladies, so yeah.
So tipping points. Let's hear some of our scientists about tipping point issues.
Yeah, sure. My name's Kira. I'm a third-year PhD student in the Atmospheric and Ocean Sciences Department, and I study coral reefs for the most part, and looking at how coral are impacted by climate change, and as you know, rising sea temperatures, ocean acidification. These are, Morgan's piece touched on a couple of tipping points, but people will also say that ocean acidification can be a tipping point because you can reach this point of no return, essentially, where it's really difficult for organisms in the ocean that calcify, like corals and mollusks and snails, things like that, to continue growing their shells. And so that's kind of how I was related to the tipping point. Yeah.
Any others want to comment on that? Yeah.
Sure. My name is Surbi Biani. I'm a PhD student in Atmospheric and Oceanic Sciences, and I study kind of more specifically atmospheric rivers, which are these big rain events we get in California, but broadly climate variability and change and extreme events. And I think that is very compatible with this idea of tipping points, like Kira said, with the point of no return. And I was thinking about with like permafrost thawing and like ice, like even with yours with the Greenland ice sheet, like those are huge tipping points that we're approaching and are like we can see them and we can hear them, and I think connecting that with music, it produces this emotional response, which is really cool to see because we kind of have a lack of the emotion when we're presenting our science, but we obviously feel it as scientists, so it's a cool representation.
So I have a question. My student Isaac, you just turned 14, right? Yeah. We were having a lesson the other day, and he said something to me that just shocked me. And I thought, wow. He said that he believes that we're heading into our 6th mass extinction on the planet Earth. I thought, oh my God, you're 14 years old. I didn't tell him this, but I'm thinking you're 14 years old and you're imagining that we're heading into the 6th mass extinction. So I'd love to hear from all of you about that. Are we? Can we prevent it? And how do we learn the truth from all the noise in the world today about everything?
It's kind of a big question.
Sorry.
As for 6th mass extinction, yeah, I mean, a lot of people definitely refer to it as that. And for me, their two pieces were actually kind of connected because these tipping points, they send us to this point of no return, and that feels like this really big abstract thing. But then when you think of it as individual species going extinct, it like kind of becomes more tangible for people, which is actually how I got into climate science in the first place. I was always just like a huge animal lover. I wanted to be a vet or a zookeeper. And then, you learn in like middle school, all these animals are going extinct. They're in like a lot of danger, and that's kind of how I made my way into climate. And I think that it's just really powerful to like see that kind of brought to life through the music. And what was the other half of your question?
There's quite a bit.
Yeah, it was a big one.
Let me ask a follow-up question. So I imagine some of you are in the climate sciences because you want to help and change the world in a positive way, right? And probably some of you are in it to learn and serve as a kind of a warning, right? An advocate for change. I would imagine there may be other motivations as well, but I'd love to hear any of you comment on those things.
Yeah, I mean, just paying attention to what's going on. Like, the impacts of climate change are very serious and palpable around the world. Like, if you think about any part of the world, you can think about the impacts of climate change and how that's going to impact people and other species that live there. Like, right here on the west side of LA, we saw these horrific wildfires recently in January. It wasn't always normal to have wildfires in the winter in January. I mean, this is when we should be getting our winter rains here in California. And we have, sometimes the rains fail, but it wasn't always normal to have such hot, dry temperatures through the winter, which would evaporate all the moisture in the vegetation, such that it could just like light up like a tinderbox. And so these impacts are here, and as long as we keep emitting carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases, the temperatures are going to keep going up like an escalator. And there's one really interesting fact about atmospheric science that most people don't know about fossil fuels is that they burn, when burned, fossil fuels release carbon dioxide and sulfur dioxide, which partly counterbalance each other in terms of their warming impact. Carbon dioxide has a long-term global warming effect. Sulfur dioxide has a short-term regional cooling effect and a lot of adverse human health impacts as well. And so as long as we keep burning fossil fuels, we'll keep increasing temperature, and then the sulfur dioxide will rain out when we stop, and then it'll get a little bit warmer because the sulfur dioxide is cooling the planet a little bit, counterbalancing. But then the temperatures will stabilize. And so that's what we need to do as quickly as possible so we can get off this escalator. And so that's what it takes a lot of work. It doesn't happen by just sitting down and doing nothing. It takes a lot of work to change our energy systems, our transportation systems, our food systems, so we can essentially heal the planet, soak up carbon, and heal the planet. And so that's why I care about it, is because of the human suffering that is being impacted by global warming around the world.
Fascinating. So Fiona, you kind of did a rap, didn't you? I'm assuming that the text is from research, or I didn't quite get what the text was.
Well, so the theme of my piece, and it's a pop song, I guess I kind of decided to indulge in this, and I feel like pop music reaches the masses, especially on a bigger level, and so my whole thing was to overcome apathy. I feel like a lot of people have this almost helplessness, doom, gloom kind of outlook of the world, like there's nothing they can do, so they might as well not do anything. And so the song kind of addresses that apathetic, like, oh, there's nothing I can do. Maybe I have to let the world has to like come to hit rock bottom before, people actually wake up. They have to kind of see it be destroyed in front of them. But I'm thinking that if it gets that far, there probably isn't anything we can do to reverse it. So it is about, what are the things that we can do, not prescribing a whole, like what everyone needs to do, but individually, what does each person need to do? So it was more of a meditation on that.
So what about your wonderful dancer who was performing? What was her motivation to do what she did?
Yeah, so we went through the music together. We went through the lyrics mostly, and then kind of, talking about this apathy, but also how can we be empowered, empower ourselves to actually believe that we can affect change, that we can do things. And so a lot of the movements were about, kind of like being asleep, and then kind of having this moment of awakening, and that happened during the bridge, during the instrumental part.
Wonderful. Selena wrote the very first, I'm sorry, I didn't monopolize that. Question? Please, sir. Yes, please, take the mic.
In order to mitigate the effects of climate change, basically, our political leaders must take the necessary steps to do that. It's like we all know a lot of the problems with it. However, our leaders aren't willing to do that. Also, there is an economic dimension to that. Like taking the steps requires countries to change their entire structures, and particularly countries in the third world aren't willing to make those types of changes. And countries in the developed world aren't willing to provide funds to allow them to do that. So how do you hope that the work that you're doing can somehow address that problem?
So I can address that. My name is Narayan. I'm a PhD student in sustainability. I study all these solutions. So I can say in terms of the leadership, so there's a lot of things that you touched on. So let me try to address all of them. In terms of the leadership, we've seen that elections really, really matter. And so it's really, really important to be politically engaged and be paying attention and voting on this issue of climate change. Because, for example, a lot of people didn't realize the difference between the two candidates on this recent US presidential election. And now the US has left the Paris Agreement, which is an absolute tragedy. The Paris Agreement is an agreement that was signed in 2015 that every single country, rich or poor, big or small, signed onto, which commits every country to doing its part to address climate change, bend the curve of emissions, and eventually, with the aim of eventually getting emissions down to zero. And this is the first time that every single country had signed on to an agreement that requires it to do its part. No country can tell any other country what to do. Each country has to make its own determinations, its own nationally determined contribution. And so that is how it was structured, and that is really important. And yes, there also is the economic dimension of like rich countries should be compensating poor countries for any additional cost they might incur. But in many cases, it actually is in the interest of each country to invest in renewable energy, electric transportation. So especially for poor countries, they don't want to have to pay for importing oil, so electrification is actually beneficial in many cases. I'm looking into electrification of rail systems, for example. In India, the country's rail system is already electrified. Here, we're still burning diesel. And so it is interesting in some cases that the poor countries are actually able to leapfrog what we're doing over here in some cases. But going back to the original point, elections really, really matter. As citizens, if you're a citizen of a rich country like the US or Canada, your vote really, really matters. If there's any Canadians in the room, there's an election in Canada tomorrow. It really matters, just like the election here did. And so, yeah, that's, was there anything else does that answer your question? Or is there more that I missed? What?
Yes, Morgan.
I was going to say, I'd love to answer this question slightly more artistically. I mean, you killed it, for real. I'm going to give a slightly less intelligent answer. I feel like we can throw numbers at politicians all we want and say, this is important, this is really important, I promise you this is important. But if they don't think it's important, then they're not going to do anything about it, which is why I think that this particular event was so incredibly impactful and important, because the whole reason that all of us wrote these pieces is because we feel very passionately about what's happening to our planet. So for example, my piece, the introduction is like how beautiful I see the Earth being. And the end, the coda, was we killed it. We killed her, which is really, really sad. And I hope that for some of you that hurt a little bit. And I'm sorry if I hurt you artistically. But that's the point. You want people to feel things and I feel my fear of where we're headed, if that makes sense. And yeah, I feel like in Maddie's piece, you could hear the like horrible sadness of like what's happening to her favorite butterfly species. And in Jacob's piece, you could hear the ice melting. It was just gorgeous. And yeah, I think it's really important to keep making art about things that we're passionate about so that people who don't care will hopefully care at some point. Yeah.
Ice melting. Jacob, could you please talk to us a little about your piece?
Sure. I can wing it, I guess. I mean, most of my piece was based on research I found about how over the last 2 decades, the Greenland ice mass has decreased substantially. And I thought that was something very important that needed to be discussed. So I thought, I'll write this piece that's all about this ice melting. So I'll go from like this icy texture based on like string harmonics and vibraphone bowed and all of this like high stuff on the piano, and just slowly kind of twist it and break it until it doesn't sound like what it started with, until we get like this big crash, which is supposed to kind of be based on like the sound of a glacier calving. There's also some pulling from sounds of like large ice sheets as they crack. It's absolutely terrifying and powerful, and so it's pulling all of this together to make this overall texture, I guess.
It's fascinating. You know, with music and science, there are a number of different ways they can connect. One is an emotional connection, right? Several of the artists went that route, and then Austin and Jacob and others, and John to some degree, did a kind of direct connection, how physical and scientific data can be translated into music phenomenon, right? That's fascinating. Literally, in your case, something melting. Very beautiful. Selena, we haven't heard from you. Yours was the very first piece, that beautiful piece, so sad.
Yeah, so the idea really started with that non-scientific idea of the swan song. But in a much more broader way. I thought, what if I write these slow sections that represent the animals crying out to humans as they slowly go extinct due to climate change, or at least partially due to climate change. So my piece, now titled Still Wings Can't Fly, it starts with the fast section, which represents the struggle, but also the beauty of nature, but the struggle with the animal species in nature.
And then you hear in the slow sections those animals crying out, similar to how a swan would cry out and sing beautifully right before they die. So we have a little bit of an overlap here because we talked about chorals and your study. So Kira, maybe you'd want to say a few words about that as well.
Yeah, sure. I think, man, it was really cool to hear the piece after like talking about it for a little while because I hadn't heard it yet before. And I think that it's interesting to think about in the context of coral because there's so many species of coral, but they all play slightly different roles on the reef and are important in different ways. And I think that it often to us feels like it's happening all at once. You know, we see those photos of the Great Barrier Reef just like completely bleached and everything's looking dead. But it really is happening in these little incremental steps. And I think that stepping in and like Narayan was talking about, trying to curb some of these emissions because a lot of these animals are really resilient and they can kind of come back from the brink. So I think that pieces like yours that are, you know, sort of have this sad element to it can kind of inspire us to be like, okay, well, let's step in before it gets there.
I think we've heard from everyone except you on the end in the red, and I've forgotten your name. I met you once. Please share with us some thoughts that you've been quietly having.
My name is Ling. I am a second year in AOS, and I'm not necessarily doing climate scale type of research, but I am working in air quality. And so I was the most excited to see the dancer because I knew that the work was kind of to do with breath, a little bit to do with breath, which is one of the impacts of air quality if you live near an oil refinery or some essentially like those neighbor communities are impacted disproportionately, and one of the signs of this is very high rates of asthma. So while it is more public health related than climate related, it's still about human impacts, like we were talking about.
It's all interconnected. Yeah. Any final questions? Yes.
I don't so much have a question as I just want to commend all of you for what you're doing for the future of our planet and being able to connect the universal language of music with the science is so important. It's a great way to communicate to people what is happening. And I just love that you're so passionate about it, you know, and I have an 11-year-old granddaughter, and now I have hope that we're not just going to destroy it by the time she's your age, because it's very hard to see the glass half full when you feel like it's just draining away. So I just commend you all, and the only question I would have is, are you feeling hopeful?
100% yes. 100% yes. There is so much beauty that can be created even from human suffering. That's the amazing power of art, is we can filter, we can take it like a prism and take that light and turn it into a rainbow. And this rainbow on stage has the power to move our hearts of people and take that political action and take that data and put it in the face of the politicians. So yes, the answer is wholeheartedly yes. Boom.
Hi, my name is Rodney. I work in the sciences quite deeply and come from an art background, so I really appreciate everything you're doing and the translations that you're doing, basically in your collaborations. One thing that seems to have come through, and I want to ask this of you also, is urgency. There is a quality of urgency in your work, and I just wanted to ask you from an artist, musician side, but also from a science side, how has this urgency that you've shared together changed the way you think about music? And how has it changed the way you think about doing your scientific work?
I can take the question from an artistic point of view. I feel like in all of my music, I usually write about specific topics in my pieces, and when there isn't a sense of urgency, I'm also losing a little bit of the passion and also communication to my audience. So urgency is really important. And now, given the topic of this concert, climate science, it's so easy as a composer to feel the sense of urgency because there's so much urgency in this topic that it was really about this really broad area of climate science, what feels most significant, urgent to me, and how does it touch me, and then how do I translate that into music. So the way I went with that urgency is by giving my players a really, really fast first section. And to any musicians in the room, this is a dotted quarter equals 160, which is really stretching how fast players can actually play. And then I went the complete opposite and had them play very, very slowly, and where it was really about the pitches, about the chords, about the melodic writing. So I hope to translate urgency into emotion and telling a message through music.
Yeah, I can try to say something from the scientific side. I think that's actually like a lot of what us scientists are struggling with right now is that, yes, we got into this because we want to help and we think it's really important. And then I feel like a lot of us have gotten here as we're like getting near the end of our PhDs and feel sort of constrained by science and the frameworks that we're given to communicate things, because it's just really not built for urgency. Like, it's built for like rigor and constraint and like all these things that I feel like don't feel like they go along with the urgency of the situation. And so I think that's why this has been so cool, is it allows us to like take our work and then communicate the urgency in a way that we wouldn't ever be able to within like a paper or a presentation for science. So I think that is why this is such a cool opportunity for us.
I would like to say, looking at these beautiful young people on the stage, I feel immense hope. And I have a feeling that some of you do as well. Thank you so much.